today we are going to see all about market structure. It's about the types of market structure, the types of competition. So the good thing about what we are going to cover today is, like, if you talk about competitions, there will be 4 to 5 categories. Okay, so instead of learning them one by one and understanding and then comparing it with some other things, so that will be like very time taking and very confusing. So we are going to understand such kind of topics in a single picture. Okay, so for example, if you see here, this is how we are going to understand, though the graph looks kind of untidy, but while understanding the concept, it will be easy to correlate. Okay, this is the perfect competition short run, imperfect competition short run. So we will learn we are going to cover 4 concepts in a single slide, because it is easy to compare and learn. So that's how we can remember it, and that's how we can form concepts over one over the other. Okay, so that's how we are going to learn today. So our complete agenda will be surrounding to the market only. So first let's understand what is market. So any space, any physical space, okay, where buyers and sellers come together and there's exchange of products or services is happening, we call that as a market. Okay, now market is divided basically in geographical area and competition. Now, geographical area is not much a complex concept. It is simply like, if suppose I am importing from other country, that is, the trading is happening at the international level, so that is an international competition. I am going to a neighbor shop and I'm buying something, so that is something from a local market. So that's how, based on people who are involved in the transaction, that is on the geographic level, so we consider them as local, national and international markets. Okay, so this was pretty easy. Now coming to competition. Okay, so here we are studying based on competition how the market is divided. Okay, so it is divided in terms of perfect competition and imperfect competition. So by the name itself we can say competition is perfectly there, means perfect competition means there is a competition in the market. So that's a kind of self-explanatory. Similarly, imperfect competition, when there is not much competition for my organization or the kind of services or products that I produce, there is not a proper competition. So when I don't have a competition, I can kind of rule the market based on my products and services. So that is a simple explanation of what we can understand from the term itself. Okay, now let's see one by one in depth what is happening inside. Okay, so perfect competition. So both the buyers and sellers have complete knowledge about the product and the price. Okay, so we are going to study about the price discrimination. So this is not going to happen with perfect competition. So let's suppose you are talking about say keyboard. Okay, everyone knows what is keyboard, what is the price of keyboard. So if I go to some other place and if someone is trying to give me at a higher cost, I know that it's at my place the cost is very cheaper, so how can you sell me at this higher price? I will not buy from you, so you are losing customer. So that's called perfect competitions, when the product knowledge is there with everyone. So because as a customer I have the knowledge, as a shopkeeper or as a producer, you cannot cheat me with high cost. So that's what perfect competition is, because if you don't sell me at a proper cost, I will buy from someone else, because there are multiple producers of this product. Okay, so because there are multiple producers, I can say for you as a shopkeeper, you have a perfect competition. Okay, similarly, imperfect competition, suppose I am living in a remote area, okay, and there is only one petrol bunk. Okay, that was just an example. So I don't have any other choice, but I have to buy from you, though I have a good knowledge of the price. Of course, it will be illegal for you to sell at a higher price, but if there is no other alternative for you, then there, of course, I have no option and I have to buy it from you. Okay, so imperfect competition. So here the example which I took for price, I know what is the price of petrol. Okay, but because I cannot go, I am buying it from you, but that does not comes under imperfect. So imperfect competition, where the price of product is different all over the market, this is because buyers and sellers are not aware of it. Okay, for example, let's take, I found out a new gem. Okay, and you are the one who can buy the archaeologist things or the jewelry kind of things, and I'm coming and selling to you the rare kind of rock or material. So there are not many people who could buy that. Okay, like here I found the rock and I'm giving it to an archaeologist. So whatever you say, I'll assume that whatever you said is correct, because there is not many people who have that information. Okay, so here, because buyers and sellers are not aware of the prices of the products, because the less number of competitions, and the rare product, or there are many kind of obstacles why it is an imperfect competition. So we are going to cover on each of the characteristics of the imperfect competition. But on the surface level, it's like when you don't have a proper knowledge about the product and indirectly about the price, it's called an imperfect competition. Okay. So characteristics of perfect competition. So there are large numbers of buyers and sellers. Fine. Homogeneous products. Homogeneous products means similar kind of products. Like we took an example of keyboard. So there are many producers who are producing the same kind of keyboard, who are producing the same kind of let's say laptop. Okay. So ease of entry and exit of the market. So if I am producing keyboard, okay, you also can come and produce a keyboard. But the here main intention is that when you are producing keyboard, you should be able to earn the profit. So when the selling cost in the market, okay, that is the market price is above the average price or the cost that goes into manufacturing a product, till then any number of organization can come into the market. Let me repeat this again. Suppose I want to sell more, I want to clear my stock, okay, so I'm reducing the price and selling it, fine, that is a different case. But when the general price of selling, that is the market price, is above the price that goes into the manufacturing, that is the cost involved in manufacturing the device or any product, is less than that of market price, till that point any organization which is producing can earn money, right? Because I am, okay, let's take a numerical example. Let's say the cost involved in manufacturing the keyboard is 10 rupees, and the market price, that is the price at which I can sell at max, is 12 rupees. So I will continue to manufacture because I am able to earn 2 rupees. So because market price is higher than the price involved in manufacturing the keyboard, more organization can come into competition and they can also manufacture and they can also send. But as the number of competition increases, the amount of price, okay, let's suppose market price decreases because there are many people who are ready to sell. So let's say now the market price is reduced from 12 to 11. Now also the organization can come and produce more keyboards because they know that for manufacturing it takes 10 rupees and for selling, that is the market price, is 11 rupees. So they are still earning 1 rupee for each product. But when market price is equal to 10 rupees, that means I am able to manufacture in 10 rupees and the market price is also 10 rupees, means I am not able to earn any profit. So in that case, many people will not come into this field and start their own manufacturing because there is not much profit that the organization is earning. So either they will leave or they will try to sustain for market price to increase. So I hope what is meant by ease of entry and exit. So here the organization will simply come into the market and they'll start manufacturing and they'll sell because of the ease of the availability of resources. The process of manufacturing is familiar. So all those kind of things are very easy. So in terms of the products which comes under perfect competition, okay, like we are taking the example of keyboard. Here perfect knowledge, because it is very common across the globe. Everyone has knowledge about it. Okay. Now firm is a price taker. Okay. Now here what we are saying is, when I have 30 organization working for manufacturing of keyboard. Okay. You have different keyboard, I have different keyboard, like similar kind of keyboard, only the brand is different. So here you cannot decide your own price, because if your price is more, people will come and buy from me. Okay. So here if the company cannot decide, they cannot fix a price, because if your price is lower you cannot earn profit. If your price is higher, then people will come and buy from me. So that's why whatever the market price is going on, that price will be considered by the organization. So here the organizations are not deciding the price, but they are going with the market price. That's why we call it as a firm is a price taker in the perfect competition. Okay, I hope that is making sense. Now demand curve in perfect competition is perfectly elastic. Why? Let me tell you what is perfectly elastic, then you can easily correlate why the demand curve is perfectly elastic in perfect competition. So what happens in perfectly elastic means, when there is a small change in price, whether it is increased or decreased, there will be a huge impact on the demand. Okay, let's talk about a specific organization, say my organization. If I am producing keyboard, if suppose market price is 11 rupees per keyboard, okay, so everyone is fine. Now suppose I increased the keyboard of the price of the keyboard for 12 rupees. So what is happening? Because of the small 1 rupee change or 1 rupee increase in the keyboard done by my organization, I am losing huge demand because people will buy from the other organization who are selling at a market price which is 11 rupees. So just because I increased 1 rupees, uh, I lost a huge customer base. That is, my demand got reduced. And if similarly, if I reduce my price from say market price is 11 and I reduce, so because I reduce the price comparative to other competitors, my price is less, so people will come and buy from me. So because of this change, because of the change in price, there is huge impact on the change in demand. Okay, that's why we call here the demand curve is perfectly elastic. So here we are talking demand in terms of price. Okay, now graph we will see when we are comparing the perfect competition and the imperfect competition. So for now, just leave this. Okay, I'll show after some time. Now, no government intervention. Why? So I would say just hold this point for a moment, because we are going to study about the government intervention in the imperfect competition. At that time, you will understand what is the role of government in terms of market competition. So at that time, you will understand why it is not required in the perfect competition. Okay. Now let's say summary of, okay, this table we are going to decide in discuss in a moment. Now talking about the imperfect competitions. Okay, so here we have three types of imperfect competition: monopolistic, oligopoly, and the third one is monopoly. So let's take an example of this and then we'll try to understand. Okay, so let me, okay, so take a train as an example of monopoly. So when we are talking about the properties, you can easily correlate. Okay, monopolistic as McDonald's and Pizza Hut, and oligopoly as Google and Apple. Okay, so let's say, okay, now monopoly is train. What are you able to get from this thing? So monopoly means exactly one and only one organization is there who is dealing with that item in the product. Okay, so that was about monopoly. Let's, based on example, let's try to understand a bit, and then we'll go into the content, and so we can correlate and understand about the characteristics and all. Okay, so first, because train, this is like for you have to maintain the roadways or whatever the ways of the train, right? You have to maintain it throughout the country. So the amount of investment that goes into the maintenance, or at the starting itself, the too much amount goes into getting the organization started, right? So after that much amount of investment and time, then you will get the amount. So that much amount an individual or a private cannot take. Okay, so that's why we don't have much competition in terms of train or similar such examples. Okay, that's why monopoly is nothing but where we have very less competition, or I can say negligible competition. So here the train railways is run only by government. Okay, that was an example. Next we have monopolistic. So if you have known what is a perfect competition, it is where we have huge numbers of buyers and sellers. So monopolistic is nothing but, yeah, monopolistic is nothing but where, okay, so monopolistic is coming under the imperfect competition, but it is very much similar to perfect competition. So what is the difference? Okay, that we are going to study. So we'll take an example of keyboard which was there in the perfect competition, and here we are talking about the McDonald's and Pizza Hut. So we'll take an example and we try to understand. So monopolistic, we have huge numbers of buyers and sellers, correct? For McDonald's and Pizza Hut also we have huge numbers of buyers and sellers. For keyboard also we have huge numbers of buyers and sellers. So in monopolistic, here we are talking about not a specific thing like keyboard, no, here we are talking about food. Okay, one will deliver food, one deals with the burger, other one deals with the pizza, but still we say that these two belongs to the same niche of the market, that is a food. Okay, so these two are dealing with the food, but they have the properties of imperfect competition. That is, if McDonald's increase the price of the burger, okay, will it decrease its what I can say customer base? No. So that means it is not a perfect competition, it is an imperfect competition, because it has its own brand in such a way that it can increase the product price or it can decrease the product price, which will not affect significantly on the demand curve. So it doesn't shows the perfectly elastic nature of the, what I can say, the perfect competition. So that's one of the differences. And we can say, okay, so let's talk about the common feature, then we'll talk about how it is different from the perfect competitions. First thing, it has huge numbers of buyers and sellers, so that is common for perfect competition and monopolistic competition. Then anyone can enter and anyone can exit. Okay, because of the same reason why we have ease of entry and exit in the perfect competition. Okay, now here they that was the common features. Okay, now the different features because of which the monopolistic is nothing but the imperfect competition is they can change their price. Okay, and here we are talking about a niche, not a specific product. So here we can say even in the food department they are having a differentiation in the product. So here we are talking about the heterogeneous products, whereas in perfect competition we were talking about the homogeneous product. Okay, so this monopolistic comes under imperfect competition, which has some kind of similar properties as that of a perfect competition. Now final is the oligopoly. Okay, now this I can say the hybrid of monopoly and monopolistic. Why? Here we don't have much buyers and sellers. Okay, remember these three are imperfect competition. Now we are talking about oligopoly. So here the oligopoly will have a small number of buyers and sellers. I mean the manufacturers. So like Google and Apple. So they take nearly let's suppose 70 to 80% of the market share. You can add some more 2 3 more organizations so as to get into the 99 or 95% of the I can say software industry. Okay, so if there are less number of manufacturers who are completely getting over the market for in that specialization, like here I can say software or I can say Android or iOS. So overall I can say operating system. Let's take an example of operating system. Okay, so these two and I can add Windows. Okay, so in terms of operating system these three companies are taking the complete market share. So here we have less number of buyers, not buyers, less number of sellers. Okay, and they don't have like, okay, today if I increase my Windows operating system by some amount, will it affect my demand? No, correct. So that is showing what? That is showing perfectly inelastic. Okay, so that's again the difference in the perfect competition and the oligopoly. So the difference between these three, okay, these three are imperfect competition. What is the differences? Here exactly one. Okay, here we have similar properties to perfect competition, just we have two differentiation that we have studied. And oligopoly, here we have the complete features of imperfect, that is the price, it can change. Okay, less number of what I can say sellers, and no one can easily come into this oligopoly. Okay, the ease of entry and exit is opposed. Okay, that is completely difficult in oligopoly. So this was our three types of imperfect competition. Okay, so let's see large number of buyers and sellers. Yes, monopolistic. So the example of monopolistic that we took was the McDonald's and Pizza Hut. Okay, so price control policy, they do not have much control over the price of the product. Differentiation between perfect and monopolistic competition. So here we have seen that even what I can say, the price if they increase or decrease, that will not show much effect. Okay, and here they are not price takers. So we have seen what price takers are. Like in the perfect competitions, organizations are considering the market price for selling, so they are not deciding the price, they are going with the market price. But here this monopolistic will decide the price. Okay, because it is not going to affect their demand. In oligopoly we have taken the example of Google, Microsoft, Windows about the operating system. Okay, so they can produce identical or different products. Impediments in entry means the ease of entry will be difficult. Okay, here enhanced role of government. So here we can see the role of government, then you will understand what was the role of government in perfect competition. So here what happens is, let's see. Okay, so it is often observed that oligopolists may engage in illegal practice where they together make production or pricing decision. So for example, let's take, we have only Colgate and Pepsodent. Suppose, okay, of course there are many. So at this point, for suppose only these two are there. So if Colgate and Pepsodent both are for mouth for brushing only. Okay, now if I'm habituated for Colgate and someone is habituated with Pepsodent. So if Colgate price increased, okay, so I have no option but I have to go with the Pepsodent and I have to do some adjustment in mine. Okay, but what happens in the illegal form, the Colgate and Pepsodent, they will decide, they will become one and they will decide, okay, we have to increase the price so that there is no loss in the customer base, either at my side either at your end. So these kind of illegal activities happens. So that's why the role of government is increased in terms of oligopoly, because here there are very less number of industries of the organization. Again, if you take monopolistic competition, here there are many by what I can say sellers. So they all cannot come together, because of course then they will be affected in the negative manner. But when there are less number of organizations, they can come together and they can combinedly increase the price, so which is not good for the market, but we have no choice but to buy it. So to avoid these kind of things, government comes into picture and take care of the price. Okay, now the cartel model in oligopoly. So what happens in, let's take two companies who are working on chatbots. Okay, so in cartel model what happens is, we have only two organizations, for suppose, who are manufacturing or working on the chatbot thing. Now the technology they use is it is costing them suddenly high, because they were both were using the older technologies. Now they both want to upgrade it. So in this case their manufacturing cost is increased, right? So what they will do is they will come together and they'll upgrade the cost. So here it is not illegal, but here they are making sure that because their upgradation, there should not, both of them should not be in loss, because they are going to increase in their price, and also because they are increasing their price, their customer base should not be lost. So in that case, in case where only 2 or 3 that number of firms are there, they come together and on basis of some agreements they form a fixed price, so that they can increase the price and get the profit. Now here again they make sure, because we are coming and into agreement and selling at this price, the amount of output, okay, the number of quantity, they'll decide it before itself. Because if you know the law of diminishing returns, okay, as you increase your manufacturing, the returns will increase. Again the returns, if you continue to increase your output, it will stabilize. And if you continue to increase your manufacturing, again even after stabilizing, the rate of returns will reduce. That we have talked in the production function, so you can refer that. So to avoid any kind of loss while manufacturing, that is the maintenance cost or the manufacturing cost, they all fixed on the certain production volume for sale. Okay, so that is the cartel model. Here they legally combine and increase their price because of the some what I can say, legitimate reasons. Okay, and then they decide how much output they each organization are going to produce. So that was about our oligopoly. And now the monopoly, here only single producer, in which we took the example of train. Okay, so yeah, all these things are fine now. Okay, so price description under monopoly is having 3 categories: geographical, personal price, utility based. So here I can say geographical price. So here if suppose something is made in India, okay, because everything is made in India, manufacturing from the raw materials to the conversion into the final product, everything is happening here. So the amount that the product cost is less. Okay, so I will set a lower price here. But if the same thing I am taking to some other country and I am selling it as a higher price, because of all the custom duties, the transportation charges and all. So like that, based on geographical, price discrimination will be there. And again, personal price discrimination will be there. Monopolists charge different prices from different users and buyers. So let's take an example, like suppose you are selling pani puri. Okay, now I come to you, no, let's take an example. Okay, you sell 20 rupees, you sell 5 pani puris at 20 rupees. So that is what as a normal person I am going to get. But if suppose there is any beggar over there, so you will give it at a free of cost. Okay, similarly, if you have a friend, so if he comes to you, you will not charge him, or if it daily comes, you will charge him at a lead price. So that is like our price is affecting because of our personal behavior. Okay, now third is the utility based price description. So here as I now in utility based price description, what happens is it is a kind of self-explanatory. Okay, so if you are using more, I'll give you at a comparatively less price. So let's suppose my internet packages. So if I take 500 GB per month, I will be given at 500 rupees, let's say. Okay, similarly if I take 1000 GB per month, it will not cost me 1000, but it will cost me 800 or 700, like that. So as I'm based on my utility, the internet service provider is charging me differently. So that was an example of utility based price description. Now finally we are done with the perfect competition. So we are going to understand how the production is, the cost or the revenue is different in each of them. So next is the relationship between the different costs. The magnitude of MC is marginal cost with the changes in every cost. When the average cost decline, okay, marginal cost, okay, so this I can show you the diagram, or else okay, I don't need a graph to explain this. Okay, let's take an example. For suppose when you are I have already taken this example. Again take the same thing. In a hotel, you have started a hotel, okay, and you have a fixed staff area for cooking. For cooking. So initially, when you have one chef and you have suppose 10 resources, or say 20 resources, or resources in the sense, let's say the utensil, the taps, let's say those are 20 units, okay. So one chef, when he is cooking, can use any of the tab or any of the resources. So I can say one chef is using 20 resources. So at that time, initially I am getting okay good interest when compared to the investment. So when I increase to 2, when I increase to 3 chef, now also I am getting the rate of interest or the rate of income that I am getting is continuously increasing initially, okay. So at that time, my average total cost is less, okay. Now as soon as I increase my number of chefs, for suppose now I have increased 3 chefs to 10 chefs. Now there is some congestion, so each chef can use only 2 resources at a time, because overall I have 20 resources. Now what is happening, there is some congestion, so my average whatever the total cost is incurred, or the rate of I can say the investment that I am getting, right, now it is not increasing at an increased rate, but it is stabilized. It means today I got 100 rupees profit, tomorrow also I will get 100 rupees profit, day after tomorrow also I will get 100 rupees profit. Now when I started increasing from 10 chef to 12 chef, 13 chef, 14 chef, here the income that I am putting, or the investment I am doing is increased, but the return that I am getting is reducing. So that reducing is nothing but the reduction is the rate of amount that I am getting, okay. So that's what here it is saying, okay. So initially when average cost declines, because initially the amount that I am getting was increasing at a increased rate, so the average cost was declining, and so the marginal cost is lying below the average total cost. So let's try to figure this out, okay. Average cost is declining, it means the marginal cost is less than average total cost, because marginal cost means the cost incurred in creating one more extra product, okay. Similarly, when ATC are constants, that is it is stabilized, so MC equals to ATC. Now when average total cost rises, because I can have a max of 10 chefs, now I have 13 chefs, 14 chefs, but resources are 20. So now my average total cost is increased, because now I have to pay 13 chefs instead of the optimum stabilized 10 chefs. So my marginal cost is increasing, okay. Yeah, so with respect to graph, okay, let me take that as an example as well. Okay, let me take this, okay. So okay, here I cannot draw. Okay, so let's say my average total cost is decreasing, okay. When it is decreasing, my marginal cost is also fine, okay. Where it is gone, okay. So my marginal cost is also it is in good stable, so compared to average total cost it is less. So if you don't know what is average, it's like if you produce 10 goods, the amount that goes divided by 10 is your average total cost, okay. Now this is also less, but as soon as it's stabilized, so that is 10 chef can be the max, and the 10 chef is what I took. So then at that time my marginal cost and average total cost will intersect. Now when I increased the 10 chef to 13 chef, at that time what happened, my average total cost increases. So because this increased, my marginal cost will lie above it. So that's what it was mentioned in the definition, that when average total cost is good, that is it is decreasing, my marginal cost will be below the curve, and when it is stabilized at that time, okay, what is happening, okay, let me take the other color, okay, fine. So when both are stabilized, at that time average total cost will be equal to marginal cost, and when average total cost is increased, my marginal cost will also increase. So that is nothing but my marginal cost graph is above the average total cost, okay. So that was what is explained, the relation between the marginal cost and average total cost. So next we are going to talk about the profit maximization. So my profit is nothing but the total revenue that I got and the total cost that I have put into the manufacturing of, let's say, keyboard. So the revenue, that is I got 12 rupees by selling at the market price, and the total cost incurred in selling it is 10. So the profit that I got is 2 rupees, okay. it's a short run or long run by which a firm determines the price and the output level. Because let's say if now I am selling it at 10 rupees and the market and I'm producing it also at 10 rupees, so the profit is zero. So because of this profit, I need to say that I have to increase my the product of the price, or I have to reduce the cost of transportation, or I have to use some innovation technique so that my total cost is reduced or the total revenue is increased, so that I get an overall worthy profit. So that's what profit maximization is all about. Now we are going to see the two conditions that must be met so as to identify what is the profit and what. Okay, so what we are doing here, okay, like suppose you and me are the part of management, and our only concentration is to, you and I as a part of management, our only intention is to increase the profit. Okay, now to increase the profit we need to plot a graph, and we need to see, if I produce 10 quantity, what is the output that I am getting? If I produce 20, what will be the profit that I will be getting? If I produce 30, so at what point should I stop, or what amount of quantity should I manufacture so that overall I get the maximum profit? Okay, so that is what the profit maximization we are going to see in the short run, in the long run, under the perfect competition, the imperfect competition. So these four are very complex if not understood, and if understood it is very simple. So this we are going to see in a moment. So before that, in all these four graphs, how to identify that at what point of time should I stop and at what point of time I am in the highest profit. So all that we are going to see, but before studying these four graphs we need to see these two conditions which need to be satisfied, so that we can say, okay, now at this point I need to stop. Okay, so for that I'm going to take this first graph. So here if you can see, the x-axis is my output and the y-axis is my marginal revenue, or say cost. So here in any graph, okay, any graph you take, we have to focus on only two things. One is the marginal revenue and the cost, or I can say marginal cost. So we have to take only these two in the consideration. Okay, so if you can see, let me take my pen, and if you understand this, the next four concepts will be very easy. So you can see in the beginning part, the here part, okay, so this part, this complete part. So here you can see the marginal, let's say this one, okay, the C part, this is okay, right. So here you can see, let me remove Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Okay, yeah, let me take here. So in this region what is happening? The cost is decreasing and marginal revenue lies below this. Okay, so what is happening here? Cost is above and marginal revenue is below it. Okay, so that is one possibility, and the other possibility is C and MR will be equal, and the other possibility is marginal revenue will be above marginal cost. Okay, or the cost. So here we need to find two conditions. So first condition is MR should intersect the MC. Okay, MR and MC. So this is, let's say, MC. Okay, MR should be equal to MC. This is our first condition. That is very easy. Now MR is equal to MC. At what point can we highlight that? Yes, here we can see MR is equal to MC, and here we can see MR is equal to MC. So first condition is satisfied. Now what is the second condition? Second condition is that after that point of intersection, MR should be decreasing. MR should be decreasing and MC should be increasing. Okay, so I can say MR should be less than MC after the intersection. Why? Because what is the interpretation behind this? Let's consider this. Okay, so out of the, okay, first identify the point, then we can see what is the interpretation of this. So here MR is equal to MC, fine, but after the intersection is MC increasing? No, so this point is wrong. Here MR is equal to MC, yes, and after this point MC is increasing and MR is decreasing. So our second condition is satisfied at this point of time. So this is our point that we need to consider for the interpretation sake. Okay, so yeah, that was all. Now we are going to see what is the interpretation behind it. So interpretation is, if after this point, if I continue to manufacture, my marginal cost is going to increase and my marginal revenue is going to decrease. That means the organization will face loss after this point. Okay, but if you see after this point, if they continue to manufacture, their still marginal cost is decreased and marginal cost is less than marginal revenue. So at point P, 1, organization is still getting profit. I hope that makes sense. Okay, because you can see at the point of intersection, after that the marginal cost is less and marginal revenue is high. So means even if they manufacture, the revenue that have, so profit is nothing but for one product. Let's say we are talking about one product. So here I can say marginal revenue minus marginal cost. So in order to make the profit, this should be higher than this. So we need to make sure that if MC is greater, then we should stop. I hope that is a clear cut explanation. Okay, so if MC is greater, we are going to make loss, so we need to stop the production. So that is what we see under these two conditions for the profit maximization. Now we are going to cover this for in the graphs, then we are going to talk about some theoretical thing. Okay, so here we are going to understand multiple concepts at any point of time. Okay, so if you see, my complete left column is perfect competition, my complete right column is imperfect competition. So if you see on the graph, okay, let's talk about the perfect competition. Okay, so in the perfect competition you can see graph is kind of similar. Okay, now this perfect competition graph, what it says is the graph is showing me kind of a demand curve. So here the graph is different because of the price elasticity. Okay, now because the price elasticity is more, therefore the only thing that an organization can do is bring the change in their quantity. Okay, either to you produce less quantity, either you can produce more quantity, but the price will remain same. Okay, so the price will remain same. So as a organization, I need to make sure that if I need to sell the product at this cost, what level of quantities should I produce so as to get the profit. So that is the same across the long run, across the short run in the perfect competition. Okay, so let me repeat this again. In the perfect competition, the price organization are price takers, so we need to sell the product at the price which is known as market price. So here market price is nothing but OP. Let me take my pen. Yeah, so this, if you can see, OP, this is the market price. So I know that I have to sell at this cost. So my point of analyzing is what level of quantity. Okay, I need to see what quantity, is this much quantity or this much quantity or this much quantity, what quantity should I produce so as to get the profit. Okay, so here what we see is my marginal cost. Okay, I have already said in any graph you have to focus only on MR and MC. Okay, once you understand this, you can easily interpret the graph. So just hold your horses for a moment. So we have to focus only on MR and MC. So first condition is I need to see where MR is equal to MC. So if you see in this graph, this is the point of intersection. Okay, where MR is equal to MC. Is there any other point? No. This is the MR line. You can see MR is this line and MC is this curve. So where are they intersecting? They are intersecting here. Okay, so here they are intersecting. Now what was the second condition? This is the intersection. Second condition was MC should be greater than MR, which means that I have to stop my production. Okay, so here is that condition is satisfied. MC is going high and MR is less. You can see this. So my second condition is also satisfied. So this is the point which I was searching now. Okay, so this is the point which we found in the perfect competition short run. Now we are going to interpret this in a moment, but let's find the same point in all the graphs. So here in the perfect competition long run, I can see MR is here because of price elasticity, and here LMC is nothing but long marginal cost, long average cost. L is nothing but long, that's it. Remaining MC, AC remains same. So here this is my MR, and where is my MC? This is my MC. So where are they intersecting? Here they are intersecting. So the first condition is satisfied. Second condition is MC is lying above MR. Okay, so even that condition is satisfied. So this is my point of analysis. This is done. Now let's find in the other case. Focus on only MR and MC. Okay, now here MR is this and MC is this. So where they are intersecting? Here they are intersecting. Okay, so we found the point of analysis. Similarly, MR is here and MC is here. It is again long run marginal cost. That's it. So only the, what you can say, notations are different, remaining all is same. Okay, so here this is my point of analysis. Yeah, now this is done. Let's now try to interpret. Okay, So as I've said, because of price elasticity, my curve in perfect competition is in this manner, where the price is remaining same, that is it will not be dependent on the, okay, so price cannot be changed by organization, so it is remaining horizontal to the x-axis. I need to focus only on the quantity produced. Similarly, in the imperfect competitions, focus on the point that we have only one or two organizations. So in that case, what is happening is the price is completely under my control. I am the monopolist. I run the railway. So it is, the price can be controlled by me. So here my intention is to have the product under the selling. So to clear the stock, to sell more product, I will continuously try to decrease my cost of the product, or I can say market cost. So in that case, what is happening is the average revenue, the what I can say, marginal revenue is decreasing, even in the long run, even in the short run. But because in the long run, okay, just keeping this point in mind, in the long run there might be possibility that some other private institution might come into picture who is again dealing with the railways. So that means the marginal revenue that I can decrease will become less. So I cannot reduce my price that drastically because of the competition. So you can see here the slope is completely more than compared to this. So that is the only difference, remaining all is same. So two things, you understood the graph, we found out the point of analysis. Let's now interpret this. Okay, so coming to the first graph, so this is, okay, so here OP is the marginal market price, and OCBQ, this is the cost incurred. So if you can see, this is the point of intersection which is parallel to, okay, so we need to find it. Okay, let me save this first, and let me do the Control Z. I simply want to take another color. 1 second, what happened? Yeah, just to spend some time so that you can easily understand. Let me take one more color. Okay, now this point of intersection is with respect to the marginal cost. Okay, now focus on marginal cost and MTC. Our second thing is marginal cost and average ATC. Now focus on these two. We are done with finding the point of analysis based on MR and MC. Now our focus is to find MC and ATC. I know my point of analysis is here, which is the intersection of MC. I need to find the, how, if I draw a straight line from it such that it is intersecting at ATC. So this is my point. So based on this, what I am saying is, this is the total cost that had incurred me in the production. Okay, and this is the total revenue that I am generating. So what is my profit? My profit is this much. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so this OCQB is the cost that incurred in the manufacturing, and this part, this total part is my revenue. So if I subtract that, I am getting my profit. Now it seems a bit of field, so you can rewind and again come back to this point, so understand. Okay, similarly I can see that here my average cost is equal to marginal cost. So what is happening here? Because in long run my intention is to consider the worst case. So in long run, worst case means what? That I am earning no profit, zero profit. So in that case, what is happening is my average cost and marginal cost is remaining same. So I am considering zero profit. Okay, so that to get into the picture the worst case scenario. So here also you can see my the average cost and marginal cost will be intersecting at the same point, because in long run we focus on zero profit. Similarly, in the short run we are trying to get some profit. Okay, so what we did in the short run will be same for the perfect or imperfect. So first we found out the point of analysis, that was this. Okay, I need to take green color. Okay, this was my point of analysis. Fine. Now parallel to this I have to check where is my average cost. So this is my average cost, and here I will draw, I can see. Okay, so this complete box is what? This complete box is my cost, I can say, and this box, this small box, is my revenue. So it is the similar interpretation that we have done in the perfect competition of short run. Now I hope this concept is clear. I know in the first incident, in the first go itself, you cannot understand, so you can repeat, you can rewind and see this again so that you can be clarified. But after understanding this concept, if you go and see the definitions of each of them, you can easily characterize each of them, because you know the concept, so you can easily characterize them. You can easily you can picturize everything when you are reading something. Okay, now we have two concepts left. Just I know this is taking more than 40 minutes what I thought, but yeah. Now this is very simple. Now, measurement of market power. So measurement of market power is simply the ability to bring a change in the market price. Okay, so if I am increasing my price and still the customer base is remaining same, that means I have that much share capital in the market, or that much occupancy my organization have in the argument in the market. So that's what we call it, the measurement of the market power. So how we calculate that is with the two methods, that is 4 firms concentration ratio and the 8 firms concentration ratio. So let me take an example, and we are done with this concentration ratio. So now these are very simple topics. Let's say I have given 4 organization. Let's say the organization 1 is having 50% occupancy on the market, organization 2 is having 40%, organization 3 is having 20%. Okay, let me write organization 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and so on. Let's suppose organization 100, till 100 we have. Okay, now let's say 1, say 2, 1, 0.5, 0.25, 0.25. Okay, now in the 4 concentration ratio, I will simply consider the first 4 organizations to find the overall market occupancy by the first 4 or the top 4 organizations. So in that I will consider only this 4. So I will simply add 50 plus 40 plus 20 plus 2. So what is happening? 90. Oh no, 1 second. That's my bad. Overall submission should be 100%. So let's take this as 10%, this as 5%, and remaining let's keep it as same. So my solution for the top 4 concentration ratio will be 50 plus 10 plus 5 plus 2. So what is this? 50, 60, 65, 67. So 67% is what the total top 4 organization is covering. So this will be the my output of my 4 firms concentration ratio. Similarly, when asked about the 8 firm concentration ratio, we consider the first 8 organization, that is 67 plus 1 plus 0.5 plus 0.25. Okay, so this is our top 8 and this was our top 4. So we are simply doing the summation to identify what is the overall market capital considered by the top 4 companies or the top 8 companies. So based on the percentage outcome, we simply categorize them into low concentration or medium and high concentration. So if you can see 0 to 50 means low, 50 to 80 means medium, 80 to 100 means high concentration. Okay, so this was one of the measurement of the market power. Similarly, we have one more, HHI. So here what is happening is, let's take an example and we'll see. Finally, as you can see in our previous example, we got 67% for the first 4 firm concentration ratio. Similarly, the output of what we are going to do within a minute is going to be like 0 to of course this going to be range differently. So if the outcome is 0, it means it is a perfectly competitive. If it is a monopoly, means it is going above, let's say 1, because as close as it is near to 0, the value is near to 0, we can say the perfectly competitive. Otherwise it can go to the infinity or any level, so that we are going to call it as a imperfect competitive market. So let's say in any particular niche of the market we have 3 organizations. Okay, O1, O2, O3. This is having 20%, this is having 20%, and this is having 25%, and remaining there are others. It's fine. So if we are focusing on these 2, if we say this is 20%, means we will do 20 square plus again 20 square plus again 25 square. So we can see the result of this thing will be greater than 1. So greater than 1 means it is not close to 0. So it will be like infinity, or it might be 10, or it might be 100. I will say that it is an imperfect market. So that is what HHI says. Okay, so whatever organizations we will have, the percentage occupied by them in the market will simply square and do the submission. So based on the output, if it is nearly 0, we will consider that as a perfectly competition. So that was all about HHI. And next we have determinants of market power. Now this determinants of market power talks about the four crucial factors in running the market. First is the economics of scale. So here it talks about that when you are coming initially to earn more profit, you need to produce more level of output, so that the cost incurred in producing, or I can say the average cost, will be reduced. Because if you are using a tempo to get the material, okay, now if you bring 10 units or you bring 100 units, the amount that you keep in the tempo will remain same. Okay, so that was just an example. So the more you produce, the less it becomes, okay, the less figure the average cost becomes. So that will be useful for the organization's revenue, right? So that was economics of scale, which talks about the quantity. The more the quantity you produce, the less the average cost becomes. Okay, again keeping in mind the law of diminishing returns. Okay, next is the government regulation. So as we have seen in the oligopoly, where or the other imperfect competition, where it is where government has to come into picture and it needs to take care of all the illegal activities that is happening, or it needs to make sure that there is a proper functionality and there is a proper supply and demand of everything is happening. So government is handling most of the things, and if there is any, suppose the market crashes or something wrong happens, so no private institution can come and again bring all the movement of supplies and manufacturing, all those things. So in that case, again government has to come into pictures to handle and bring back the situation to the normal control. Next is the control of raw material. So if suppose I am the only one who produces the Intel processors, okay, now if I increase my cost drastically, or if I sell to someone at a very low price, that is again not correct. Okay, so that's why there should be the control of raw material, so that I should always make sure that the people who are getting it from me should continue to get, so that they can manufacture continuously. So there should be some control, some restrictions around me, so that I cannot do any kind of illegal activities, or keeping into mind the morale, the people who are dependent on me. So all those things will come into this control of raw materials. Next is the customer loyalty. So this talks about that I can say I'm loyal to particular brand. Okay, even if that brand increase its price or decrease its price, I will not move to some other brand for my clothes, for say example. So this kind of customer loyalty will act as an obstacle for the other organizations or the other company to enter into the niche or enter into the market, because it is not the price, it is my loyalty towards the brand which is already existing. So that is one of the obstacles which keeps the other organization to come into the market. So these are the four major factors which are known as the determinants of market power. I know today's video was too long, so if you have any queries with respect to the market structure, the type of competitions, how it is divided and all, please write down in the comment section. And if you have any suggestions, please write down that as well in the comment section. And followed by that, if you liked my explanation, please do subscribe and click on notification bell and share it to as many people as possible. So that's it for today. Thank you.